Welcome to In the Zone alongside Michael Zabkowski, Zach Humphreys. I'm your host, Travis Schuster. Playoffs in the NBA and NHL are heating up. There have also been some moves in the NFL with the draft right around the corner. We have a lot to cover. In the Zone starts now. The first round of the NBA playoffs is almost in the books. Philadelphia, Denver, and Phoenix have already clinched their spot in the conference semifinals. Devin Booker put up 47 points on Tuesday night en route to a 136-130 win over the Clippers. Zach, what's next for the Clippers, and might we see that Phoenix go on a deep playoff run this year?
The Phoenix, after how they just played, I did say last time I was on here that Phoenix would not win this series for the sake that they rely too much on their starters. I was clearly proven wrong, by the way. Devin Booker seemed to absolutely take over on both nights. And, I mean, even Kevin Durant had 31 points last night. It was incredible watching them play. And then DeAndre Ayton, you can't forget, had, I believe, 21 as well. The Suns are definitely looking like the best team in the West at the moment for the sake that I don't ever believe in the Nuggets making it out. They always seem like the Baltimore Ravens of the NBA, where they succeed greatly in the regular season and falter in the playoffs. It's one of those teams that I can never really get behind when it comes to playoff time.
I agree, but only on that note about another team that was in the series, not the Phoenix Suns. The LA Clippers, they always have a good regular season. Everything seems good, and then we were talking about it before the show. Paul George gets hurt. I don't even know what it was this time around, but it's always something. Kawhi Leonard,
Do you think it's time for the Clippers to move on from him?
I don't know if it's so much time for the Clippers to move on from him or if it's time for him to move on from basketball, because he just can't play a complete season. I mean, he can't even play a complete playoff series right now, and that really came back to bite him in the butt. Russell Westbrook played great, but that's one guy, you know what I mean? And as far as Phoenix, I mean, over half of their points right now are coming from Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. I mean, Booker scored 47, as mentioned. Durant scores 30. And that's not a one-game thing only. I mean, that Durant and Booker are just having a really, really good start to the playoffs right now.
And exactly like you mentioned, there's no way that Russell Westbrook himself, like you said, he played great in the series. It's one guy going up against a starting lineup like that. That's very tough to go up against, especially with how the Clippers basically built their success around Paul George and Kawhi Leonard to put them in this position, and now they aren't there when the time matters. That's going to hurt you in the long run.
Moving over to the East, Trae Young took over late in Tuesday night's game against Boston to keep the Hawks alive. Boston leads the series 3-2, but with this series heading back to Atlanta, can the Hawks force a Game 7, Mike?
I don't know. I feel like Larry David right now. Look, it was just a late run from Trae Young that really is putting them in this spot anyway. And that's what he does, right? But that doesn't matter if, the Hawks and Celtics play like they did in the other few games where the Celtics blow them out of the water for the first three quarters, right? They stayed in it in the first three quarters the other night, and then Trae Young did his thing. Jaylen Brown had 35 points last night. That was great, but Jason Tatum was held to under 20. That was a slim margin of victory that the Hawks had in Game 4, or Game 5 rather. So, Tatum goes and has more points than I'm not seeing it happen. They might have a little bit of an advantage at home, but it's very similar to what we talked about with the Clippers. It's one guy, and sure, the Hawks have a very talented team, but I don't know if Trae Young can single-handedly do what he did again.
I definitely agree with you, but I'm just going to put it more in blunt the way I think. Hawks do not have a chance. I definitely see them not making it out. I mean, like you said, Jason Tatum just had a rough night shooting. He scored only 19 points from a guy who was atop the MVP voting. Jason Tatum should not be shooting like that in the playoffs where, hey, man, you have one bad game, that's totally fine. But if the game was that close with him shooting poorly, shout out to Jaylen Brown for continuing to keep them in that game with the 35 points like you mentioned. And then also Boston only shooting 50% from the free throw line, that's not going to get it done. Those points will matter later on, as they did later on. I mean, that's That's the only reason the Hawks ended up winning by 3.
Now, I'm going to throw this question to both of you. What do the Hawks need to do in order to force a Game 7 and potentially have an upset in this series?
I mean, they got to play better defense, and I mean that's something that I could say not only for looking ahead at the next game, but you look back at the other games and they need to play better defense. As you mentioned, the Celtics, the only reason they lost is because they didn't shoot at the free throw line very well. That's not a credit to the Atlanta Hawks defense. There's no defense at the free throw line. That's purely on the Boston Celtics. You know, you have to keep Jaylen Brown under 30. You got to keep Jason Tatum at bay, which they did last night, the other night, but I don't really know what there is to do. You can only contain the Boston Celtics for so long. There's a reason that they were the second best team in the East. So my answer is you go and make some moves in free agency and come back for a better year. I don't really know if there's much you can do other than hope that TRAE Young gets 40 points and hopefully Jason Tatum has another bad night. But that's not going to happen.
So consensus is Celtics are going to win next game and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, especially one thing I also want to highlight on is the way the Celtics have dominated in the paint for the whole series. I mean, just this past game, Boston had 60 points in the paint compared to the Hawks 38, and they out-rebounded them last night too. Yes, they didn't come out with the victory, but if they continue to get dominated like that in the paint, any other game, they are not going to come out on top.
Now heading into Wednesday night's slate of games, the Knicks, Lakers, and Heat all lead their series 3-1. Mike, which one surprises you the most, and which teams have a real chance of making some noise?
Well, the Miami Heat, of course, has to be the one that you're most surprised at. But how about the LA Lakers, right? I mean, both teams winning their series, obviously, and you look at the other team, and what comes to mind is, oh, well, Giannis isn't playing for Milwaukee, and oh, John Morant must not be playing. They were out one game. Giannis was out one game. Morant was out one game. These are just you get into that play-in tournament, you're fighting for your life, you come into the first round, and you got these top seeds that are thinking, it'll be okay. We're just going to blow past them. It doesn't matter. They had to even play a game just to get to this point. The disrespect is being shown there, especially from Memphis, right? I'm not a big fan of their core of players with, Morant has some issues, but Dillon Brooks is just a real issue, we'll say. But Jimmy Butler, I mean, we talked about you can't have one player carry the team. Well, yeah, that's true unless he scores 56 points, which he did the other night. So
how far do you think Jimmy Butler can take the Miami Heat?
He might take him to the Eastern Finals because he's done it before. There's no reason he can't do it again. And no disrespect to the Philadelphia 76ers, but I mean, if Butler's going to score 50, 40 points a game, and then you get Bam Adebayo doing his thing, I mean, you get that team going. I mean, the Sixers are great and all, but Jimmy Butler's a dangerous man.
The Heat definitely have a real good chance here, especially by the way that they have seemed to kind of move away from the whole aspect of worrying so much on Giannis rather than just doing their thing on their side of the court at the end of the day. I mean, Giannis is easily probably the best player in the league, probably top 3 across the board. But the way the Heat have conducted themselves around him has just been awesome to watch. And I mean, even highlighting the Knicks, like you mentioned earlier, the Knicks, they were faced with the adversity of people saying that that young core would build around them. Going back-to-back games, as I mentioned, R.J. Barrett is finally finding his shot. He's finally making shots. Last time I was on here and talked about it, he was shooting 24%. He's now shooting 56%, averaging 22.5 points per game. That is going to push the Knicks on to hope to maybe play the Heat as well.
Yeah, I mixed up the bracket a little bit. They would play, of course, the Knicks or Cavaliers, but still, even, I mean, that just makes me think that the Heat could definitely beat the Knicks or Cavaliers. So,
now,
I think Heat could definitely go far.
Now, I want to ask one quick question. Both players if they both play in their prime, Giannis or Butler, who would you rather have playing for your team?
In the playoffs?
Antetokounmpo, easy.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, Jimmy Butler. Overall,
no,
Giannis.
Okay. Here's the problem with that. Nobody is stopping Giannis. No, I don't care who you are. You can be a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. You can be Andre the Giant. He's scoring on you. I don't care who you are. Jimmy Butler's great.
In the playoffs, Jimmy Butler.
Yes.
Overall, Giannis.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Golden State and Sacramento have split the first 4 games of the series. The next 2 of 3 games will be played in Sacramento, as Golden State has a road winning percentage of under 30% this season. Zach, can the Warriors overcome their road woes, or will the Kings move on to the second round?
I have always been a fan of the Kings since they've started the Light the Beam at home. And, I mean, even if you look at the videos that are surfacing of finally having playoff basketball in Sacramento, there is no way you can lose in that environment. I could go out there and throw on a purple jersey, and I'm scoring 30 points with all those fans behind me. I definitely think that the Kings will come out on top, but I do want to give the Warriors credit. They did what they needed to do to stay in this. I believe that if they lost one game in Chase Center, it was over. They ended up going in there, staying in this series by evening it up. I give credit to the Warriors, but I am still a big believer in the Kings.
I just have to laugh because most people would say I've been a big fan of the Kings ever since they started winning this season. But no, yeah, I think the Light the Beam thing is a very cool thing. And having a couple guys from Maryland there, Kevin Herter and Alex Len, I always, since they have been there, I've been kind of rooting for the Kings a little bit. But
do you think the Kings can take care of them, though, like Zach says?
Yeah, absolutely, because the Warriors can't win on the road. They are 11-30 on the road, which is got to be the worst road record in the league. And whether you're playing at Sacramento or at Pustillo Gymnasium right here, if you can't win on the road, especially as a 6 seed playing a 3, where most of the games are going to be on the road in a series, if you can't win on the road, yeah, you're not going to win that series. So, I don't care if they have Steph Curry or who they have, they can't win on the road, and that's going to be what kills them.
Although I do want to real quick highlight the news that came out about De'Aaron Fox with his finger. He is listed doubtful for this upcoming game, which could be huge because in the playoffs you are losing, for the way De'Aaron Fox has been playing, you're losing 30 points per game at the least. So with that going in, the only way that I can see the Kings coming out on top tonight, I definitely still see them being a favorite depending on how Fox's injury goes. But I would need to see Sabonis and Malik Monk step up in the absence in case De'Aaron Fox misses tonight. It's still up in the air, but even if he does find the court, he's not going to be the De'Aaron Fox that we saw earlier.
Time will tell. Now shifting our attention to sports here at Millersville. This past week has been busy for Marauder Athletics. We send it over to Stephen Armstrong for the latest in Ville sports.
Things are starting to heat up in the world of Millersville sports, with sports playing in and preparing to make runs for the playoffs. Women's tennis beat Bloomsburg to advance to the semifinals of the PSAC tournament with a score of 4-3 at the McComsey Tennis Courts at Millersville. They then advanced to the semifinals, falling to Indiana University of Pennsylvania by a score of 4-0 on April 22nd. The Marauders end the season with a 9-10 overall record. Chloe Abramowitz had the best record for the team with a singles record of 14-9 and a doubles record of 12-9. Men's tennis beat Frostburg State by a score of 4-3 on April 19th, ending the regular season with a record of 7-8, but fell to Mercyhurst on Saturday by a score of 4-0 in the PSAC tournament. In singles action against PSAC opponents, men's tennis went 21-9 over the season. Men's golf played twice over the week, placing second at the Bloomsburg Invitational on April 20th and tying for 7th out of 25 teams during the two-day NCAA Super Region Preview on April 24th and 25th. Women's golf played in the East Stroudsburg Spring Invitational, placing second. Women's lacrosse had a tough battle on Senior Day against Kutztown on April 22nd, keeping the game close through the first 3 quarters, but the Golden Bears scored 6 in the final quarter to pull away from the Marauders, winning by a score of 17-11. Ashlyn Simonetti led the Marauders, scoring 3 goals on 4 shots. Women's lacrosse's record stands at 8-7 overall and 5-5 in conference action. Track and field ran 2 invitationals during the last week, taking home individual victories for both Hannah Wolfling in discus and hammer throw and Darian Hauff in the pole vault. On Wednesday the 19th at the Shippensburg Midweek Invitational, while Saya Trujillo finished in first with the discus with a personal best at the Hopkins/Loyola Invitational in Baltimore, Maryland. Softball played competitively to Lock Haven on Friday the 21st, but fell to the Bald Eagles by a score of 6-4 in Game 1 and 7-4 in Game 2, and lost 2 on the road at Shippensburg on the 22nd of April, losing to the Raiders by a score of 5-1 in Game 1 and 8-0 in Game 2. Softball then returned home to play a doubleheader on Tuesday the 25th, losing Game 1 to Shepherd 9-6, but walked off with an RBI single by Lacey O'Donnell in Game 2 to win by a score of 8-7. Baseball stayed in their winning ways over the last week, beating Shepherd 3 times by scores of 20-13 on April 1st and sweeping the Rams in a Sunday doubleheader on April 23rd with a score of 16-2 in Game 1 and 9-6 in Game 2. They then beat Wilmington 5-0 at Cooper Park in Millersville to extend their winning streak to 9 games. After 8 Millersville relief pitchers combined to pitch 11 2/3 innings over the last 4 games before the Shepherd matchup, Millersville pitcher Matt Seibert gave them some rest, pitching the first 9-inning complete game for the Marauders since 2017 against Wilmington. 60 of the 88 pitches Seibert threw were strikes, and only 4 hits were allowed. Good luck to all teams throughout the rest of the season as they make the last dash through the regular season and into the playoffs. Now, let's head back to the desk for some updates on the Stanley Cup playoffs. Travis?
Thank you, Stephen. Now turning our attention to the ice, the Stanley Cup playoffs are well underway, with many series needing at least 6 games, including the Minnesota Wild and Dallas Stars series, where the Stars lead, the Edmonton Oilers and the Los Angeles Kings series, where the Oilers lead, and the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Islanders, who recently won, staving off elimination. Zach, which of these series has surprised you the most, and which of these teams can win in their Game 6 and move on, and what teams will force a Game 7?
To start with the most surprising, I feel like it's kind of on the easier side where the Islanders are somehow still in the series. I don't think that they're going to win this upcoming game, but the fact that they've made it to a Game 6 should be a bit of a brag itself. You know, now you're coming back to New York, you're coming back to your home ice, so maybe they can stay in it for one more game. Ultimately, I think Carolina's going to pull away from it. But one series that really seemed to keep my attention in was the Wild and Stars. The Stars have finally begun to take that lead as most should have expected, but now you're going back to Minnesota, where I feel like this is a pretty even matchup throughout the entire 5 games that they played. I think that game has been very exciting. I mean, just this past game, the Stars ended up winning 4-0 with 2 power play goals and 1 empty net. So I believe if the Wild can stay out of the penalty box and more on the ice, I think that they can definitely get this series all wrapped up.
Yeah, what you had said about the Wild staying out of the penalty box is exactly what the problem with the Kings are. Edmonton's a great team with Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, but if you look at every time Edmonton goes on the power play, it's just, well, here's another goal about to get scored. And you might not like what I have to say here, but that Wild series is wild, you might say. I mean, it's crazy. It really is one of the better series. I think that and the Edmonton-LA series are right now the better series going on right now. And how about we also shift our attention to Tampa Bay and Toronto, right? A lot of people were just ready to write off the Toronto Maple Leafs and give the next round to the Tampa Bay Lightning, but it has not been the case. Toronto has done a really exceptional job of fighting and winning some games to stay in this thing.
Especially after that, I would put quote-unquote pretty embarrassing start to the series. Yeah. I mean, if you're wearing a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey or a sweater, as some people say, and then you go out and then you lose 7-3, it's a very strong showing if you come back and then win 3 straight afterwards.
Going back to the Oilers and Kings, on Tuesday night, the Kings and Oilers played Game 5 up in Edmonton, playing what was a hectic game, at least in the first period, where 5 total goals were scored, and both teams had multiple shots ring off the post every time the Kings seemed to figure out the Oilers always seemed to be one step ahead of them, not allowing the Kings to have the lead the entire game. As the Kings now face elimination heading back to LA, Mike, what happened in this game? Will the Kings be able to stave off elimination, or is Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl just too powerful?
They're great, but I wouldn't say that they're too powerful for the LA Kings right now. What is too powerful for the LA Kings right now is their inability to stay out of the penalty box. We briefly mentioned this in the last segment, but it's true. I mean, the LA Kings right now, every time they go in the penalty box, Edmonton scores almost every time. Obviously, I'm over-exaggerating here, but right now, if you keep McDavid and Draisaitl at bay, which LA has been doing a pretty good job at doing, even in that last game where they lost 6-3. They've been able to keep them at bay, and when you stay out of the penalty box, you're going to win games across the NHL. But that's been the defining key in this series between the Oilers and Kings.
But why do you think the Kings couldn't keep that momentum going to the second period? They had a lot of momentum in the first, kind of staying toe-to-toe with them, but then second and third, it just kind of fell apart, and Edmonton just took over.
Well, not to belabor the point here, but when you're so close to scoring, as you mentioned, a lot of the shots were going off the goalpost. That kind of kills momentum a little bit. But again, not to belabor the point here, but when you have so many penalties, that really is a momentum killer. Just like in football, when you're on a great drive and you're almost at the end zone, and then you get a 15-yard penalty, that really kills the momentum. Same thing in hockey. I mean, when you're in and out of the penalty box and giving up 6 goals always hurts too, that's tough. And going back to the Jonathan Quick trade this season, that was one that I think really hurt the chemistry and the team camaraderie in the locker room. Kopitar, Drew Doughty, all those guys. It was Kopitar, Doughty, and Dustin Brown. I know he retired last year, and Jonathan Quick as the core group. And now with Quick gone, I think that disgruntled a few of the players.
Now, since you're a Kings fan, if they somehow lose the series, do you think it would be time to move on from Anze Kopitar and try to build a new core of players?
I think that's already in process right now. You know, Kopitar and Doughty probably only have a few years left. They already, you know, Dustin Brown already retired. They already moved on from Jonathan Quick. I'm not sure that, you know, them losing to the Edmonton Oilers is, oh, just get rid of everybody, that's great. But, you know, they're already kind of doing that. We have a lot of young players coming up through the system and everything of that nature. So I think it's around the corner. I wouldn't say throw everything out because you lose to the Edmonton Oilers, though.
And I mean, like you touched up on earlier, I do actually have some of the numbers. The Oilers have the highest power play percentage at 57%. That's just ludicrous. But I mean, also I would say that the Kings also have to touch up on their defensive play. Like you said, it kind of does matter when you live in the penalty box. But also when you're allowing a total of 186 shots just through the postseason itself, that's going to reflect in the score. Your goalie is not going to be able to save all of those. That's why they're scoring at least like 4 goals per game. It's not going to look well, and currently, if they keep playing like they are, they're not even going to last this upcoming game.
Moving over to the East, on Monday night, the Toronto Maple Leafs shocked everyone by coming back from being down 4-1 to the Tampa Bay Lightning by scoring 3 goals in the third period, where Austin Matthews scored 2 goals and Morgan Riley scored with 3:56 left to force overtime, where the Maple Leafs got a power play due to a tripping call on Mikhail Sergachev, where Alexander Kerfoot was able to score the game-winning goal, giving the Maple Leafs a 3-1 lead in the series, setting them up being only 1 game away from winning their first playoff series since 2004. Zach, how are the Maple Leafs pulling this off? Will they win? And what's going on with the Tampa Bay Lightning after it seemed like they had this series locked after Game 1, after they won 7-3?
I would say that the biggest thing that the Maple Leafs have done is they've just found ways to find the back of the net, and the Lightning are giving them too many power play opportunities. I mean, I think they've had 13 different power play opportunities. That's not going to look well compared to the 9 that the Lightning have gotten, and also it's just executing those power plays. 9 power plays and only 1 goal coming out of it. That's not the best ultimately throughout the series. And I mean, also the Maple Leafs have just found their groove on offense. They're leading the current league in the postseason with 5 goals per game as an average, and no matter what team you are, that is you're going to lose to that 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, having Austin Matthews helps, and it's about time Toronto won a series. As you mentioned, it's been over 10 years, you know, almost 20.
It's almost 20 years.
Yeah, it's insane. And, you know, Tampa Bay, they've been so good in the postseason for so long, and that's where you get to have some of that complacency start to set in. And it's just about time, you know, there's nothing more to it. But as you mentioned, the numbers really do tell the story with executing the power plays and just, you know, as you said, they just find a way. So a great credit to Toronto for finally looking like they're going to win a playoff series.
Just think about this. If you're a Lightning fan, your team won to Stanley Cup 3 years in a row, and now you're on the verge of losing to the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, this has got to be more embarrassing than the Lightning getting swept in 2019 after they won the President's Trophy. It's just brutal if you're a Lightning fan.
It sounds like you're a Lightning fan, Travis.
I am not, but I expected better. All right, now moving on to the NFL. With the NFL draft right around the corner, some big moves have been made in the past couple weeks. The Ravens made a splash acquiring Odell Beckham Jr. On top of that, over the past few days, some tweets have come out from Ravens players suggesting that more moves might be on their way. Mike, your thoughts?
I don't know what's going on. We got Lamar Jackson tweeting out SpongeBob memes. We got Odell Beckham tweeting out Drake lyrics. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully it's good. I guess the Baltimore Ravens official Twitter account posted an eye emoji tweet, so it must be good. I don't know whether that means that DeAndre Hopkins is trending that way towards Baltimore, or if it just means that the Ravens are finally coming to the end of the Lamar Jackson contract saga. Either way, I'm all for it. You know,
now, how much, sorry to cut you off, but how much meaning do you put behind these tweets? Do you think they actually have some meaning behind them, or do you think it's just the Ravens and some players just having fun with it?
I think it has some meaning, but I don't. Again, it could mean anything from we're getting DeAndre Hopkins, Lamar Jackson's going to sign, or we're just going to draft somebody on Thursday night. I don't know what it is. It's crazy, but you know, for Odell Beckham Jr., back to the signing on him, not playing after a year, it's tough, right? It reminds me a lot of when Deshaun Watson was traded to the Browns, right? Everybody thought, how well is he going to play? He hasn't played in a year and a bit. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about Odell Beckham Jr. Now, as a Ravens fan, seeing Odell Beckham Jr. all those years ago make that crazy catch in the Giants uniform, I probably never would have thought that he was going to be playing for the Ravens. He's out of his prime, yes, but hopefully he still has something to bring to the table.
And I mean, like relating back to those memes, there was definitely an automatic click between Odell and Lamar. I believe they linked up the day after he officially announced that he will be signing with Baltimore. So I believe it's kind of annoying as Baltimore fans because they just announced very minimal details and then they're gone for a week and we have I haven't heard anything about DeAndre Hopkins in a week, and the draft is right around the corner where it's still in limbo whether or not we are even going to pick up a cornerback like Joey Porter or whether we're going to get somebody like Quentin Johnson or Zay Flowers as a receiver. I mean, it's up in the air at all times this whole offseason, and I would love to have some answers.
Mike, real quick, as a Ravens fan, do you think Odell provides the spark the Ravens need to finally, make it pretty far in the playoffs, or do you think he's just going to be a non-factor?
In the middle. I don't think he's delivering the spark to just say, oh, we signed OBJ, we're going to make the Super Bowl, but I also don't think he's going to be a non-factor. I think, he's just going to be another. I think he's going to disappoint some people because Ravens fans like to get their hopes up and they like to think, oh, OBJ is going to have a 2,000-yard, season. No, it's not going to happen that way. He's going to be great. He's going to be good. He's not going to be, the best season of all time.
This week, the Green Bay Packers finally made a move everyone suspected was coming. Aaron Rodgers is no longer a Packer, as the Packers have traded him to the New York Jets. This move makes for surely an interesting season in the AFC East. Zach, what do you think this means for the AFC?
I feel like this automatically puts the Jets. I know it's still kind of early, and after last season with Aaron Rodgers, he didn't play as the Aaron Rodgers that we saw after back-to-back MVPs, but this is definitely putting the Jets in contention. I mean, ultimately, as we were saying last year, it was just Zach Wilson and Mike White that were ultimately holding back that Jets team. The Jets' defense was incredible. I mean, people were saying that they were going to the Super Bowl with that defense, but ultimately, when you have a guy named Zach Wilson behind your center, it's never going to happen no matter what team you throw him on, okay? So I feel like it's about time that Aaron Rodgers went to New York, and I feel like this can't be anything but a positive thing for New York, and I don't even think it's a terribly bad thing for Packers, basically, based off of the amount of picks that they got as well.
So, two things. You said this puts the Jets in contention. For what?
I would say for giving the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Patriots a run for their money.
Where do you see them finishing?
They're definitely not beating the Bills. The Bills are.
Thank you. Okay.
The Bills are good. I'm not saying that they're going to beat the Bills. I'm saying that they won't. They're definitely not just going to fall off like they did last year.
But do you see them beating the Patriots for second place?
Yes.
You
The
calling
Patriots
it right now?
Yes. I'm willing to bet the mortgage that the Patriots are going to finish last in the entire division. Because here's the problem. When you compare the other teams, the Patriots do look good, yes, but they aren't as good as the Dolphins showed last year. They haven't really made any changes. Tua, will he even stick around and be healthy? That's still up in the air. But it's ultimately the Patriots won't be that team in that division.
I mean, they weren't that team this past season in that division, and I mean that was even with the Tua injuries and everything of that nature. I think obviously Aaron Rodgers is an upgrade, sure, but I think in that division it's just so tough. I mean, you got Josh Allen and the Bills, you've got, as you mentioned, Tua and the Dolphins. I mean, that's a tough division. If he had gotten traded to a division like the AFC South, I'd say, oh yeah, he's going to win the division, no problem. But yeah, the Jets have a great defense. They now have Aaron Rodgers. But that's a tough division. I don't think that you can just walk in there and beat the Bills, as you mentioned. So, I think they're going to be a wild card contending team. I don't think they're going to be a Super Bowl contending team.
At best, I would say a wild card spot, especially with that division and the way it looks. At best, they would be a wild card spot. And hey, depending how they play during these 17 games, we may even see them make a pretty deep playoff run.
Do you think this was the right move for Aaron Rodgers, especially considering how late he is in his career?
Well, considering it took him months to get players out of Green Bay into New York, and then he finally made his decision, I feel like this was ultimately the only answer.
Now shifting over to baseball, some unlikely teams have gotten off to great starts entering Wednesday. The Orioles are in second place in the AL East, and the Pirates are in first place in the NL Central. Mike, how about the Mo's?
How about them O's? Let's go. Let's get the home run chain out here. That's great. It's finally, the Orioles are finally relevant. Isn't that amazing? They've been so bad for so long.
How long's it been?
Too long. Too long, I can't even remember. And, you know, sure, you can count the 2016 season where they made the wild card, and then instead of putting Zach Britton in there, I still have nightmares about that, by the way. They put Ubaldo Jimenez instead of Zach Britton, who's having a great season that year. I don't count that season as a really good season. They were so-so that year. But they're relevant. They're fighting in one of the best divisions in baseball right now. And you know what's even better? I'm sorry, Brad, I know you're behind the camera here, but the Yankees are in second to last place in the division as well. That just, I'm like a kid on Christmas morning right now. But more, you know, talking more about the team here and other factors. Pitching entering the season was a thing that a lot of people, including myself, were kind of shaky on. I was like, I don't really know what's going to happen. Middle of the season, so far they call up Yenier Cano. I think he's pitched probably after today's game, I think he's pitched 24, 25 innings, has not allowed a run yet. I don't even think he's allowed a hit yet. He's just, they have so much young talent. Adley Rutschman, as we've mentioned on previous episodes, Ramon Urias, like just the whole team all around is not only talented, but they're young. So this is a group of guys that they could be around in Baltimore for quite some time.
And after winning 8 of their last 9, and now they're going into a series against the Detroit Tigers, who haven't been that good.
Yeah, I mean,
like they're down
they
there.
were like the they were like what the Orioles. Oh my God.
The Orioles
I
were
hate that
during
name.
this good like 3 or 4
Yeah,
stretch
thank
when they
you.
were at the bottom of the division. Yes, they do have a tough division, but now they're going up against the Tigers. Yeah, they can carry this through, and like we mentioned earlier, the way the Pirates have seemed to take over with that core as well, the way Brian Reynolds just secured an 8-year extension going into a 2031 like player option, and then you also have Andrew McCutchen still putting up numbers. I mean, the Pirates team has also been fun, and the Orioles are just as fun to watch as well.
Now, real quick, how far are the ECDOs going?
I would like to say that they would go to the wild card. I don't know that they're going to win in the wild card, but they're going to contend for the wild card, I think. They might even get there, but again, just a really tough division. Hopefully they can beat out those good teams. Like they're not going to beat the Rays, obviously, but I hope they can beat out the Blue Jays and Yankees.
And of course, the Pirates getting help from former Philly Andrew McCutchen. On the other hand, some teams have gotten off to somewhat not so good starts. The Guardians, Angels, Mariners, Cardinals, and Padres are all 500 or worse. Zach, which of these teams can turn it around?
So based off of the teams that you told me, I would have to say that the Padres have the best chance of turning things around. I mean, they just picked up their best player after the 80-game suspension. And I mean, their schedule isn't even that scary upcoming. If you look ahead, they do have the 2 games against the Cubs, who the Cubs are looking really nice so far. The NL Central has really surprised me with how they've come out to play the way the Brewers and even the Cubs have played as well. But then there's also that, and then you also go up against San Francisco, who has been kind of struggling. Those are also crucial division games, who I think they're going to go in there and take the series, along with going up against Cincinnati, who is at the bottom of the NL Central, shocker. And then you also have the games against the Dodgers as well. But then also you can't forget the Angels. The Angels have struggled recently, but they do have 2 more games against the Athletics, then the red-hot Brewers, along with St. Louis and the Rangers. Those 2 teams, I would say, have the best chance of turning things around up next.
Yeah, what really surprises me is the Guardians struggling in that weak AL Central. I mean, we talked about this last week, and I know, I feel like we're beating up everybody's team here. We talk about the Yankees, who Brad likes. Owen over here likes the Guardians, and Peyton likes the Packers. I feel like we're beating up on everybody here, but seriously, I mean, Cleveland can't score right now, and is that something that they might be able to fix in the near future? I don't really see it. Is it something they might be able to fix by the end of the season? Yeah, there's a lot of games in baseball, anything can happen. But right now in that division, I mean, the Twins are under 500 as well, I believe, and they're in first place. It just, you have to do better right now in that division. You can't be under 500 if you're Cleveland, because they were the favorites coming into the season in that division.
I mean, it continues to be a pretty poor thing if you're a Cleveland fan. I mean, the way the Cavs are going to get knocked out, now the Guardians are seeming to struggle. It doesn't really help much. And another team I want to highlight are the Mariners as well, taking a slow start. They were a surprise wild card team the way they seemed to catch fire right in the end. But now they're pretty slow to get into, especially with the Phillies and then Toronto, and then you have 3 back-to-back against the Rangers and the Stros. You have the Athletics in there, but we don't need to highlight them, along with the Rangers and Stros as well. I mean, the Mariners are a surprise struggle as well.
I think the Padres are hungry for one after losing to Philadelphia and acquiring Xander Bogaerts in the offseason. I think for Padres fans, the Padres need a win.
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, like we mentioned earlier, they do have an easy upcoming schedule, especially with San Francisco coming off to a pretty slow start as well. I believe they're 10-13. They do play tonight, and then also the 3-game stretch where if they go in there and they win at the least 2, that'll propel them up in the division standings as well.
Well, that will do it for this week's episode of In the Zone. For Travis Schuster, Zach Humphreys, Stephen Armstrong, and the rest of the crew here at In the Zone, I'm Michael Zabkowski. A special thank you to our entire crew here at In the Zone for making this great year possible. It's been a great pleasure being one of the producers for In the Zone this year, and I'll never forget it. Thank you again to everyone who made this all possible, including our president this year, Allie Ross, and our vice presidents, Val and Tommy. Good luck on your final exams, Marauders, and we'll see you back in the fall right here for more In the Zone. So long for now.